All right, well, hello there. Mr. Kennedy here, and we're now on chapter 5, which is Egypt and Kush. So, we're on lesson 1. We're going to talk about the Nile River in lesson 1. So, the Nile River was the most important factor in the development of Egypt. So, kind of like the Mesopotamians used the Tigris and Euphrates, the Egyptians are going to really center their life around the Nile River, and that's going to help them throughout their development in ancient Egypt.
So now we're going to talk about the Nile River Valley. It is the longest river in the world, more than 4,000 miles long. That's really long, 4,000 miles. It flows from the south to the north. Okay, there's only 2 rivers in the world that do that. St. John's River here in our county and the Nile River over in Egypt. It flows from the south to the north into the Mediterranean Sea. Has strong rapids called cataracts. These are like very rapid, quick waterfalls. They can be very rough. Here is a very good picture of it. The delta is a triangle-shaped land with fertile soil. So if you look right here, that is your delta. It is shaped like a triangle, and I want you guys to draw that. Shape that triangle. Okay, that is just a triangle shape of that fertile soil. Oh, look, there it is again. Okay, triangle. Got it? Okay, ancient Egypt had 2 regions. It had Lower Egypt in the north and Upper Egypt in the south. Now, here's where you're going to have to do some filling in because unfortunately it was left off the packet. See this right here? Think elevation. I need you to write that in right underneath this. So if you have to pause the video, write this in. Think elevation. So this is not your normal location. Like lower is not located in the bottom. This is Lower Egypt is in the north and Upper Egypt is in the south. And we have a cute little song for this. So what we want to see is you guys passing us in the hallways and doing this song for us. And we need you to do the hand motions too. And I'm thinking that there might be maybe gummy bear, gummy worm, if we see you do it. So are you ready? It goes Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile, Delta. You need to put your hands up in that V shape, okay? Do it again. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile, Delta. I want to see you doing it in the hallway. I have gummy bear, gummy worm. So does Mr. Kennedy. So does Miss Hodges. We're going to give it to you if we see you doing it in the hallway. Okay, so you should have filled in think elevation. And now you're going to put Nile River flooded 2 times a year, leaving behind fertile soil to grow crops. This is where I need you to add in the extra piece of information right here. Flooding was predictable. I need to see that in there. We all need to see that in there because if we are going to compare and contrast our geography, we would know that Mesopotamia was unpredictable flooding. And now we're telling you it's predictable, which means they knew when those 2 times of flooding a year would come. And that's a game changer, right? If you know when the flooding's coming, I think that some settlements can be saved. So what I want to talk to you about now is why the Nile River flows from the south to the north, okay? It is because of the elevation. So I'm going to hold up this right here. Can you see this down here? This is Upper Egypt. This is Lower Egypt. The reason that Upper Egypt sits in the lower part of Egypt is because the elevation of the land is higher. So Upper Egypt is sitting in the lower portion. Lower Egypt is sitting in the northern portion. So Upper Egypt just means that the land sits higher. Lower Egypt means the land sits lower. So Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile Delta. Got it? We're looking for you singing it in the hallways. Okay? Especially Mr. Kennedy. He's really looking for it. Okay. So is Miss Hodges. And I am too. Okay, bye.
All right, so you can watch the bloopers and you can see why this is my take 2 and see what happened, why I had to have a second take here. So early agriculture was allowed and able to flourish because of the flooding of the Nile River. Ms. Tickle just told you that it floods predictably, and so that means that some settlements could be saved. And farmers were able to develop some irrigation systems that would use those floodwaters of the Nile. It allowed them to provide a stable food supply, which we call a surplus. Crops and fruits and vegetables, wild fish and wild birds were all things that were provided by this stable food source. So their surplus did not just include crops, it included other things, other forms of other types of food that were because of the Nile. Now, the Nile is a freshwater river, and so there's going to be lots of fish in there and able to fish that out really easily. And it's also going to be the only source of water for quite many miles all the way around. And so the birds and animals are going to come there for that too. And so there's many natural barriers for protection. So let's check out this photograph. And we can see how irrigation actually changes the way the landscape looks. We can see the levees that have been built, and these are levees right here where where the dirt has been dug out, and you've got little mountains there, little hills that help hold it in. Those are called levees. And then the canals water is used to go the other way and irrigate the land that way. So the Nile was very much a life-giving force for the Egyptians. One of the other things that we can see, here's a satellite photo, and I really like this satellite photo. Let's see if I can maybe erase that. There we go. So here's a satellite image, and we can see all of the fertile delta, Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile, Delta. Remember Miss Tickle said that? So you can see all of it right here. There's the delta. And delta is actually a Greek letter, and that's why we call it a delta, because a delta looks like a triangle. And there's the Nile. It's a really wide river. I mean, it's a really wide area. The river itself is not that wide. That's the fertile land that's all around it. So that was super helpful. So if we're looking at these two regions, remember Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile, Delta. So it's Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile, Delta. And you've got that triangle there at the top. There were two separate regions of Egypt, and they were united under one ruler. So the kings would unify Egypt, and the two regions banded to became two Nile regions banded together to become separate kingdoms in 3200 BC. But by the time 3100 BC comes around, King Menes of Upper Egypt has united both kingdoms. Now, Menes has two names, and this is sometimes a little confusing. So what I need for you to do is you are going to write in Menes over here next to our little guy, Menes. Now, that's his Egyptian name, but Narmer is what they called him in Greek. So he has two names. Narmer, you need to write both of these down on your paper, and Menes are the same people. And he unites Upper in Egypt, and he becomes their first pharaoh. Super important. Write the word first on there somewhere. You could draw a fancy number 1. We did that before. So he's going to be, we could say he's kind of like Sargon, because he's going to be the first to start the pharaohs. He's going to, and that's what we call Egyptian monarchs. They're going to pass power down to their son. And he's going to found Egypt's first dynasty. Super important. So we're going to talk a lot about this and a little bit more. So, but this is the government section. If you could write this in your grapes under government, under the political part, about how the King Menes unites Upper and Lower Egypt. All right, so that is all for me. Stay tuned for your hot question. See ya. Be sure to check out the bloopers for take 2.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, back at you here for your hot question of Chapter 5, Lesson 1. So, your hot question for now is list and explain at least 3 ways in which the geography of Egypt helped or protected the people who lived there. Now, remember, you can go back. There were some other slides that mentioned some physical barriers. So, remember with this hot question to go 3 to 5 sentences and go back to your chapter packet and your vocabulary and try and use as many vocabulary terms as possible. So go ahead now and answer this hot question. You can pause this video while you answer this with 3 to 5 sentences and vocabulary.
right, so Miss Tickle just got finished describing to you about the geography of Egypt, the northern and southern part of Egypt, upper and lower Egypt, and how that these two areas um, are very different from what you think they should be. You may hear that squeaking. That is my puppy over there playing with her toy. Maybe she'll stop. I may have to go get her. So, farmers developed irrigation systems to use the waters of the Nile. Now, she told you that the river is going to flood predictably, which means, Zoe, yeah, stop. Yeah, don't do that. Zoe, that's my dog. Okay, so the farmers develop irrigation systems to use the waters of the Nile. Okay, it's gonna have to be a blooper.